In our last video, we covered some of the main sustainability labels we see when we grocery shop for our family. We also touched on alternative ways to buy healthy, sustainably grown food when these labels are not available for whatever reason. Let's continue our conversation. Hi, and welcome back to Mama's Footprint. This is a channel dedicated to sustainability in parenthood / childcare. This is the second of 2 videos on sustainability labels, so if you missed the first one, make sure to click on the link above so you can get the full picture. Today we'll be covering palm oil, Rainforest Alliance, Forest Stewardship Council, and Certified Humane. The concept of greenwashing will be presented with examples of terms that may confuse consumers, such as natural and earth-friendly. The topic of palm oil is a chunky one, so we'll be spending most of our time on it. Incredibly enough, roughly 50% of the products we buy at the grocery store, from food to cosmetics, have palm oil as one of the ingredients. The use of palm oil grows every year because it's such a versatile oil. You can make our soap soapier and our chips crispier. It can extend shelf life, meaning that the ready-made food and packaged chocolate chip cookies we buy taste fresh for longer. But why is that a problem? Well, the issue is not with the African palm itself or the tree from which the oil is extracted, but with how it's being produced. Nearly 85% of the palm oil consumed around the world comes from the rainforest region of Malaysia and Indonesia. The monoculture of African palm has gotten out of control, especially due to the lack of strict environmental policies on land use in those regions. According to the World Wildlife Fund, critically endangered animals such as the Sumatran tiger, orangutan, elephant, and rhino, and endangered animals such as the Bornean orangutan and pygmy elephant are being threatened every day by the unchecked agricultural expansion of African palm crops. The UN estimates that 90% of the Sumatran orangutan habitat, for example, has been destroyed in the last 20 years, calling it a conservation emergency. This conventional method of preparing the land for the production of palm oil often relies on a method of slash and burn to wipe out the native forests, giving way to bare land in a quick, practical, and inexpensive way. All that smoke contains carbon dioxide, one of the heat-trapping gases causing climate change. Not to mention that many days of schools are canceled for Malaysian and Indonesian kids due to poor air quality. Animal cruelty is also associated with conventional African palm agriculture. Wild animals flee their homes as they're being destroyed and often invade villages since they are fire-free zones. These animals are tired, hungry, and scared and may be aggressive to villagers, especially if they carry their young with them. In exchange, villagers need to protect themselves from these animals, oftentimes fatally injuring them. Animal cruelty due to palm oil does not stop there. Before setting the native forest on fire, animal traffickers go out in search of young primates, such as the orangutans, for some extra cash through the illegal pet trade. The mothers of these little ones are known to defend their children to their death. Unfortunately, it doesn't end there. Conventionally grown palm oil in Malaysia and Indonesia is commonly known for abusing indigenous rights. Indigenous communities that have thrived in the native forests for generations and now watch these forests burn to the ground are forced to work in palm oil crops in extremely poor conditions and are paid just enough to survive. So, absolutely no palm oil, right? Well, it's tricky. Some people seem to think so, that the way to abolish this issue is to boycott palm oil. And that's a valid and respectful line of thought. There are many brands out there known to be palm oil free and instead use other vegetable oils. Another line of thought is supporting products with sustainably produced palm oil. This way of thinking makes sense, especially when you consider that the African palm is up to 10 times more productive than any other oil crop. So it has the potential to being the most sustainable vegetable oil out there. But the certification is crucial. In 2001, the World Wildlife Fund began developing the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, or RSPO, There's a list of measures farmers must commit to before you can see that their product contains Certified Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO. Other ways of guaranteeing sustainable palm oil are through Rainforest Alliance and Fair for Life certifications, which are organizations with similar standards. You may also find the certification for Palm Done Right. If the product you want to purchase does not have the sustainable palm oil certification, check the back label to see if it has palm oil in the first place. The tricky thing is that palm oil isn't always written explicitly. There is a list of dozens and dozens of ways in which palm oil can be cited on the back label, but some of these names are more common than others. Palmoline, for example, or anything that starts with palm, can be one of them. Vegetable oil with high saturated fat, sodium lauryl, and L-ascunensis. If you want to know more about a particular brand that you usually buy for your home, you can download a free report on this topic written by the Union of Concerned Scientists. Since I mentioned Rainforest Alliance a little bit ago, let's talk some more about it. Rainforest Alliance is a non-governmental organization that works towards the conservation of biodiversity. When you buy chocolate for the kiddos or for yourself, for example, and you find this label on the wrapper, you are supporting an organization that works against major drivers of deforestation and environmental destruction. They also work to improve the livelihood of workers and communities linked to the forest-related ingredients in that product, such as the cocoa beans for that chocolate you're getting. Forest Alliance trains farmers, foresters, and tourism operators in sustainable practices that conserve land and waterways. This organization found the Forest Stewardship Council. That's because the Rainforest Alliance, as the name says, works mostly in rainforest regions of the world. So the Forest Stewardship Council allowed for the expansion of their work to other parts of the world. You'll find the certification on things that are timber related, such as on boxes of colored pencils, coloring and printing paper, and wood furniture for your children's room. This certification creates an incentive for forest owners and managers to follow best social and environmental practices, conserving biodiversity and ensuring the rights of workers and local communities. Next up is Certified Humane. This is related to animal products such as meat, dairy, and eggs. Certified Humane is managed by the nonprofit organization Humane Farm Animal Care. Their standards include a nutritious diet without the use of antibiotics or hormones. It also guarantees that animals are raised in shelter, resting areas, sufficient space, and the ability to engage in natural behaviors. This may seem redundant when you read that the eggs you buy are from cage-free or free-range hens, but words can be deceiving. There's a huge difference between the definition of cage-free by the USDA and the Humane Farm Animal Care. When you think cage-free, what comes to mind? Happy, free-moving hens mingling around a spacious barn, maybe? Well, by USDA standards, cage-free simply means that the hens don't live in a cage. The term does not indicate how much space they have or whether or not they see the outdoors. Certified Humane sets the standard that each hen must not only be cage-free, meaning not living inside a cage, but also that they are each given at least 1.5 square feet to live in. Notice, however, that for cage-free, there's still no indication of outdoor access. Outdoor access for free range by USDA standards can mean that they can reach the outdoors through a pop hole with no full body access. Not necessarily what you imagine, right? There is also no minimum space required, so these hens are potentially still locked up in a crowded barn. By Humane Farm Animal Care standards, there is a requirement of at least 2 square feet per bird, and that these birds must be fully outdoors for at least 6 hours a day, weather permitting. Differences in the definition of what we find on food packaging aren't the only thing that might confuse us. The market has its eyes on the consumer, watching what attracts them most. And some sustainability terms are being used even though they may not be exactly what they seem to be. This is a practice called greenwashing, which is basically the idea of making a product or a practice sound sustainable when it's either not or when there's a false priority to it. There is a popular detergent, for example, that claims to donate $1 to wildlife programs for every bottle sold. That's really great and would deserve all the merit, if not for the fact that one of their ingredients, triclosan, has been officially declared toxic to aquatic life. So make sure you're not falling for the environmental facade and that you choose well when buying products to clean your home. Another typical greenwashing practice is calling a product natural. There's no harm or penalty for the brand in using that word since there's no certification process for it. You can't call something organic at a grocery store when it's not certified, but that's not the case for natural. The rationale is that ultimately, every ingredient comes from something that's natural, no matter what happens in the process. High fructose corn syrup, for example, is extracted from corn prior to being engineered, and corn is natural, so yeah, don't fall for it. If it's really natural, it should be explicit on the back label. You should be able to recognize and pronounce every single ingredient you see, no complications. There are actually certifications that acknowledge when something is actually natural. The National Science Foundation, for example, has the Certified Plant-Based label, and the USDA has the Certified Bio-Based product label. But if it only says natural, and there are tons of weird ingredients in the back, you're probably being greenwashed. I hope this and our previous video helped you better understand all these sustainability labels you find out there. I also hope they have encouraged you to better understand when there is simply a false message of health and sustainability on them. Lastly, in the case of our previous video, I hope you feel encouraged by knowing that there are alternative ways to still eat healthily and sustainably, even when you don't see these labels. Thank you so much for watching, friends. Please subscribe as I will continue to bring you more topics on sustainability in childcare and beyond. See you very soon.